welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, the Me Too movement has truly taken off in India. A lot of victims are speaking out, and the predators and those whom they have accused have actually taken them to court. The matter is now in the courts, but is that the end? What about the court of social opinion? And also, taking into account the number of cases that are coming out, are the lines getting blurred? Are some people actually using this movement to settle old scores? And if they are, then that actually doesn't help the movement. It actually serves to sabotage it. To discuss where this movement is going in India and if it's actually going to achieve something, I have joining me on the roundtable Prashant Mehendiratha. He's a High Court advocate. He actually was the one representing the victim in the Terry case. I have Namita Bhandare. She's a women's rights activist and a columnist. Adwaita Kala, she's an author and a columnist. And we have Amit Lakhani. He's the president of the Men's Welfare Trust. Namita, where is this movement really going? We've seen the cases come out. In fact, I've seen you very vocal on Twitter, also speaking on behalf of the women. But what's next now?
What's next? Well, let's see what we are up against. I know we call it Me Too because it's a convenient handle in the age of social media. But unlike the Me Too movement, which began exactly a year ago in the United States, which was the result of a very in-depth investigation by the New York Times and by New Yorker into Harvey Weinstein, this really was an organic movement, I would say, that erupted on social media. I think the Brett Kavanaugh hearings perhaps triggered something, and on social media, suddenly women were sharing stories. You know, about, and you're right, there was a whole range, right from what I would call just inappropriate workplace behavior to outright sexual assault. So we saw a whole range of complaints. By and large, a lot of women, particularly the younger women, had screenshots, they had chats, they had evidence. So there was, in that sense, due process, because, you know, we hear that term a lot when it comes to sexual harassment at the workplace. I don't think we've heard the last of it. I think this has been unstoppable. We've seen one minister resign already following the weight of public opinion, where even his own prime minister could not defend him, can't defend the indefensible. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's happening, unfortunately, only in media and in entertainment, and there's a reason for it, which is that there's a critical mass. There are a lot of women now on the newsrooms, in the newsroom. So they have a voice. Right. But we're not looking at 96% women who are employed in the informal sector. We're not looking at construction workers. We're not looking at domestic workers. We're not even looking at government, you know, government employees. We're not looking at that. So we're looking at a really, really small tip of the iceberg. I don't think we've heard the last of it.
But the indefensible, Adwaita, as Namita calls it, you know, the PM also couldn't defend the indefensible, but he's getting his day in court. And what the other side is really saying is they're citing other cases, you know, the snapshots and other evidence that women are branding about, saying that a lot of these are also affairs gone wrong. So how do we make out the distinguish between a genuine case and a case that is being used to settle scores?
Well, I think firstly, I mean, since the PM has been raised, I think it's important to establish here that these are allegations that really came into play before his time as a politician, certainly before the BJP and before becoming a minister.
Fair enough, but it's the character of the man.
Yes, so there's an abuse of power quotient if you look at it from the holder of a job, you know, like when, which is why, you know, Clinton was in so much trouble and the impeachment happened and all of that was because it was while he was in office, he was an intern and there was an abuse of power. Okay. This, in this case, has not come forward as yet. I'm not saying that they may have happened, but as of now, it has not come forward. That during his time as a minister, there was. This is entirely in the realm of another life and certainly not only a personal flaw, but a character trait and a pattern of behavior which can only be defined as predatory. So I think he had it coming and I don't think anyone wanted to or could have defended him. That's that part. Coming to the process of due process, I think that's important. We live in a society which is governed by the rules of the law, and an accused does have rights. Whether you like him, dislike him, he's your brother, he's your enemy, or not, he does have rights, and he has a version that the law permits him to tell. So I think we have to acknowledge that and accommodative of that. Having said that, you know, in the Kerala nun case, for example, you saw the entire church machinery come forward and smear the nuns and those protesting with her. And I think, you know, so that kind of smear campaign, which is orchestrated, which is driven by very powerful organizations, is something that we've seen very, very recently in the Kerala nun case. So unfortunately, women who come forward do experience this. The process itself is very confrontational. It can be very debilitating financially, emotionally, psychologically, and can cause even further trauma. These are all well-documented things. So it also answers the questions a lot of people raise is, why did it take you so long to report this? And these are the very reasons why.
Amit, you've also seen the other side.
See, first of all, there is no denying that we should have healthy and safe workspaces for men and women both. But coming to the Me Too movement, has started in a way that, people are coming out in the social media. None of them initially had, opted to go to the competent authorities. There are CAW cells, there are Mahila Thanas, there is a DCW, there is a NCW. So it was, like you go and malign somebody on the social media, and it was more like, settling your personal scores rather than going to the competent authorities and proving who's on the wrong side of the law. We are not saying that somebody is on the wrong side of the law should not be punished, but they should be...
But you heard them both say how the minister actually went down on the court of public opinion at the end of the day. So it's a very powerful medium. The person you accuse is powerful. He has the institutions at his beck and call. Then you turn to the court of public opinion.
And he's still filing criminal defamation.
And he's still filing criminal defamation.
Are we moving towards a digital mob lynching culture wherein,
it's not mob lynching.
Wherein, we'll decide on the social media who's right and who's wrong.
No, I have evidence.
It is not for the court to decide. There's a principle of natural justice which says that the man is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law beyond reasonable doubt. So why do we not that natural justice principle and follow that there should be a due process of law? If a person is actually guilty, we should punish the person. But on the mere allegation, on a mere testimony, we are stamping people as sexual predators, molesters and rapists. That is something which is uncalled for, and that is making the movement a tool for satisfying personal vendetta.
Okay, we have someone who's actually been through the due process of law and nailed a scalp. Tell us a bit about the case. How long did it take, and do you think at the end of the day the courts did help?
Yes, the Terry matter is still sub judice, and of course it is at the stage of now prosecution evidence. After 3 long years, first time a witness, the complainant, would be coming to the court to depose on oath and be subjected to cross-examination, of course. Now, coming to the point made by Amit, which is extremely interesting, he says that this is kind of digital lynching. Now, the interesting issue is, let's take an example. I know somebody stole something belonging to me. Let's say my expensive pen. I know that person has stolen it. Am I duty bound to just go and lodge a police complaint and get an FIR registered? Can't I go on social media and say, I know this person stole my pen?
Will you go
He's
after
a thief.
20 years?
Yeah.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that.
I did.
Amit, I'm just coming to that. Now, I have a right to go on social media and say that this person stole my pen. Now, the other person feels defamed. He can, of course, file for defamation. He can file a civil suit for defamation. He can file a criminal suit for defamation. The victim, so-called, the lady in this particular case who goes on social media has to be prepared that once she's going on social media, whether she's crossing the line, the right, whether there's going to be a cross-action coming towards her or not. If she's not, my legal advice, my opinion would be, please stay put. But if you're ready to, and you know the other person will not comment, there are so many cases where the perpetrators of sexual harassment have chosen to remain quiet.
Absolutely.
What does that show? They don't want to come into open. Now, in one particular case, the minister chose to file a criminal complaint. And now the victims are going to come forward, they are saying, I don't know whether they will, that they'll come to court and depose against him. Now, once a magistrate hears a criminal complaint sort of a thing, a statement being made, he can suo moto initiate action, get an FIR registered.
Even
once the authority
even
law,
the victim can go under 156(3).
Now, with regard to limitation, why after 20 years? Please try and understand the scenario today.
Firstly, there was no law 20 years ago.
Today, the scenario is that we can't shut our eyes that sexual harassment is happening at workplace, it's happening in residences, it's happening everywhere around us. Whether it's the maid in the house or whether it's your top boss in your company.
And it is all, I'll just interrupt. It is happening to both genders.
And now, I'll just come.
It's happening to both genders.
I'm sure it will happen to men when women are in charge. Women are not in positions of power. I want to just come
if the lady chooses not to file or go under due process, as you say it, she chooses not to file a criminal complaint. Let's assume for a minute. She only goes on social media and says something against the person. Law does not bar it. Law has a mechanism to protect that individual whose image is being tarnished.
As long as it is in the ambit of, the defamation law.
It is a risk the victim, the woman, is willing to take. I am saying something against you, take me to court, prove me wrong.
Okay, let me get Namita in. Also, you have a case where you spoke up after 20 years.
Yeah, so 30 years actually.
30 years.
That long ago. We didn't have a law. Till 2013, there was no law on sexual harassment. You had the Vishaka guidelines, which were not even implemented. No one was even aware. Even today, Prashant will stand testimony. There are so many companies that do not have internal ICCs as mandated by law. I think the point we are missing about sexual harassment at the workplace is that it is based on a power hierarchy. There is a skewed, there is a male boss and there is a female subordinate. When females are bosses, yes, it can happen. It is in the realm of possibility. But as of now, you have male bosses, entitled male bosses. You have to understand where a lot of these women are coming from. It's heartbreaking because I followed many of these cases, girls coming from small towns, fighting with their parents because the parents are saying, tum shadi karo, please have an arranged marriage. They fight to come to Delhi, Bombay to work. Then they encounter this predatory boss. If they go back to the parents to complain, the parents will say, humne to kaha tha, mat jao. Delhi, Bombay mein yahi hota hai, shadi karo, wapas aake shadi karo. She doesn't want to do that. She has an aspiration. She has an ambition. So she keeps quite 70% of all sexual harassment cases, this is by the Indian National Bar Association, do not get reported.
So I'll as a counter, I would like to quote a survey which was E.T. Senuet survey, which showed that 32% perpetrators were men in the survey of the sexual harassment, and 68% were women.
I'm really surprised. That women are in so much power that they have.
Whereas we have a law, we have a sexual harassment.
But are the men getting harassed by men or men getting harassed by women?
He's saying
men getting harassed by women as well, because perpetrators.
I want to know these workplaces where women are
there
so
are 16% women perpetrators.
Okay,
And we have a law here which does not protect the men. We have a law, the sexual harassment law, which was made in 2013. It only protects women from the sexual harassment. So are we blindfolded towards a fact that men can also be sexually exploited?
We all want gender neutral laws
in the workplaces?
Okay, let me bring Advaita in.
Well, this reminds me of that film, the Demi Moore,
yes.
Michael Douglas
I want to work in that organization where women have
where there was the reverse question of sexual harassment, and there was a female boss.
What is the name? I've just
and sure, I mean, sexual harassment to a large extent is about power dynamics, and it is almost entirely about power dynamics. The interesting thing is the New York Times, which Namita rightly said, sort of jettisoned this whole movement, carried a study yesterday which said of the 203 men who have lost their jobs, contracts, titles, blah, blah, 50% have been, replaced with women. So, you immediately see an alteration in the power structure. And I think this is the long-term, and it's been a year coming for the movement in the US, view of the Me Too movement is that to really alter the power structures in traditional organizations, media companies across the board. And I think this movement has, I think it's one of its more defining achievements that it's managed to alter that power imbalance. But coming back to, I take the point of the defamation. I think it's important to deal with this topic with empathy. There are certainly cases wherein there have been complaints that have to a certain extent derailed the movement as well, because they have come across as frivolous in some instances. Yes. And now I don't say that there's a hierarchy of violation, or any of us here can sit in judgment of what is violative or not. But I think there have also been cases which have been very, very profoundly violative. And the issue, as always, is that nothing existed 20 years ago. There was no internal complaints committee. There were always whisper networks. I remember when I went into the workforce about 15 years ago, we automatically knew who was the lech in the hotel. I worked in hotels.
Correct.
Who was the guy you should stay away from, who was the guy who looked at you funny. These were whisper networks. What Me Too has done is that it's weaponized the whisper network. So if men felt that women were not talking about them like this, then they're mistaken. The only thing that has happened now is that women are okay with talking about it publicly.
The whispers have got a public platform.
And they're okay not with everyone. Many are
following the law, the legal path. They're
Also.
okay with that.
It is only the
well.
men like Ayushmann Khurrana has come out, men like Irfan Khan has also come out about sexual harassment on them, but we generally don't talk about, men being, at the hands of sexual harassment. It is only that we always see one gender as a victim and the other gender as a perpetrator.
We
always.
can always have a
And as
conversation.
far
There is
as
a reason
that's
for
the
it.
issue.
But that's
I
because
don't
of
think
the
that's the
numbers.
issue
No,
at all.
but then
There's a
even
stereotype.
see the
Men
law,
are not the victims
the
here.
law,
I'm sorry.
the law
I'm
as the
sorry.
Constitution says, it should be equal for every gender.
Yes, I also agree with you, but men are not the victims here. Please, do not hijack this moment.
Before the debate starts on that, we need to take a short break, but stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing the fallout of the Me Too movement and also whether it will have the desired impact or not. Namita, before that we were discussing the Terry case. The victim has spoken out, the matter has gone to court. But really, do you see any kind of justice happening?
No, absolutely not. She is completely and utterly traumatized. She is terrified of entering an office. So she is this traumatized person living in fear, living in an anonymous condition. Pachauri is invited all over the world. He was recently invited to attend an award function where David Attenborough was being honored. What kind of justice is this?
So much for the court of public opinion.
That's due process. This was a high.
Mr. Pachauri has himself yesterday in the court said that,
now he's saying
that it should be expedited.
Well, I hope there'll be justice before he goes to meet his maker.
I'll say one simple fact. We have to understand the sexual harassment. Any woman who has faced sexual harassment would agree with me that it's not only just the psychological trauma that she goes through, it is also a biological, the physical pain that she suffers is immense. I've spoken to top bosses in organizations. The way the flirtatious behavior, it has gone down tremendously. The way they are talking to women is different. They're giving them the due respect. A fear in the corporate world is setting in that we don't know my flirtatious behavior today, when it will come up as a Me Too movement, which is really good. It is so important for women to speak up. Till now, unfortunately, we all men had been saying, go ahead, lodge a police case against me. Come on, look at our system. Look at how many cases are pending. The judges, I am privy to my client, one of my clients, and I will not name her, went to record a statement under 164 CRPC in a Delhi court before a Mahila judge. And I'm shocked to say the statements that were made by the lady Mahila judge who's supposed to be sensitized towards the issues of women. She turned around and she said, oh, so he touched you, he hugged you. What did you do? So she said, nothing. I went back, I cried. She said, the next time it happened, oh, this was voluntary. You agreed for it.
This is a very important point,
till the time we do not sensitize our judiciary, till the time we do not have more of Mahila courts. We have Mahila courts here in Delhi. We have specialized courts in Gurgaon dealing with the women issues. We want more Mahila courts. We want these cases to be decided in 6 months or 8 months' time.
Right.
You have vulnerable witnesses, those who are below the age of 18 years, you can take them into a separate witness box. Take the women to a witness box.
The point I'm come in here is also that, this is important to make it a more gender balanced sort of thing. We've seen even with the Tarun Tejpal case, for instance, where, she approached the female boss. And there was little done in that case. Right. And this we see repeating over and over. We've seen some commentary from very senior journalists, female journalists from another generation, admittedly, where you actually see this pattern of women almost being enablers. So, you know, in that sense, I think, you know, it's important to even discuss this and to talk about it, because it's not so much a male-female. I think sometimes it gets into that, you know, polarized part of the discourse. But it's also, we've seen instances where women have been enablers, where women have said, shut up and sit down, this happened with me and I got through it, you'll get through it. You know, that kind of psychology comes into place. And what you're saying is exactly the same thing, where women in power, when women with ability to change things, kind of become enablers, whether wittingly or unwittingly.
I mean, just a second. This is a classic case of empowerment through empathy.
So it's a power thing.
This is a no.
It is a power thing.
It's a power thing, because power also grants you immunity.
It is giving voice to those who've been actually harassed. To have even one genuine victim speak up, I am willing to take on 10 fraud women who are lodging fraud cases.
Where are they being lodged?
Let one actual victim wake up.
We are going to decide the cases sitting on the social media.
We are going to separate the wheat from the chaff.
So we are sitting in a country.
Amit, we are going to separate wheat from the chaff.
Okay, let me make my point. See, we are sitting in a country where we have Mahila Thana or CAW cells in almost every district. We have a Delhi Commission for Women. We have a Ministry for Women Welfare. We have a plethora of platforms where a woman can actually approach if she is looking for justice. Now we are saying that we should not go to all these platforms and we should go to the social media, and that is where we decide the cases and probably socially convict a person.
So when I go on social media against XY, X and Y also has recourse in law. He can file criminal defamation. I can spend 10 years running to court to defend myself. Yes, I can.
People who are going on the social media, they know that the defamation laws are toothless. Nothing happens in the defamation.
I'm sorry.
They are on the social media.
So many women walking up and using the Me Too handle. Tell me how many defamation cases have been filed against these women.
Okay.
Now, there is one known case where we see a criminal complaint having been filed. There were defamation cases filed against our chief minister, Delhi's chief minister, his strongest body.
So
what happened to those? Eventually, apologies were made. Cases got settled. They were withdrawn. You take it to the logical end. If you're actually the victim.
I think we're getting off track. I really think we're getting off track.
Let me bring Namita back. I think it's not about defamation cases per se, but
I think it's just setting right and a historic injustice. Men have been entitled. Male bosses have been predatory.
Yes.
I'm not saying all, but certainly a large number. We've known the casting couch in Bollywood has been Bollywood's Advaita will talk more about it. Open secret. People are scared to come out because you don't want careers to get derailed.
That's it.
And so you have that. So you know it's a very complex. And I'm just saying, open your mind, be a little empathetic. That's all. I understand that men can also be victims. I'm not saying that.
All I'm saying is the law of the land should prevail.
Yes.
What is there?
Who wants to go to court? No, I'm sorry.
You cannot simply on a testimony socially convict
something happened to me. 1 minute. Something happened to me.
Okay,
Is it a case that a man cannot use a Me Too handle? Is it a case if a man has been sexually harassed?
If a man goes out and says that I was sexually harassed by that woman, there would be counter cases. Sexual harassment law does not protect man.
Why don't we just get up and walk out? Let the men take over, They take over everything. I just want to remind you about one thing. You're talking about due process. There is a woman called Bhavri Devi in Rajasthan, after whom Vishaka was formed. And after whom the sexual harassment law came into being. Do you know her status right now? She is still awaiting justice in the Rajasthan High Court. Because a judge had ruled that upper caste men could not have raped a lower caste woman. This is due process in our country. You are asking women...
Close down the courts then.
No, I'm not saying that.
We should open Me Too courts. We should have Me Too courts.
We have
Me Too courts.
I'm sorry,
we should close down the courts in the
CAW. We should put our faith in the hand of men and wait our whole lives for justice. Right? That's what we should do.
I'll leave it to you to give the final word.
We'll do our fights.
Very quickly, I think these opportunities are rare where you actually get to address this directly. And I would just go back to, again, the nuns case in Kerala, which has been, by the Catholic Bishop Council of India, been defined as a workplace last year in terms of sexual harassment guidelines. So it clearly falls into the Me Too spectrum. And of course, we've seen the defamation. And just 2 days ago, we saw a father who stood by the nuns who had raised alarms about his security die a very unnatural death, which has been called by the police, they've called it an unnatural death and they don't know the reason why. So these are really the challenges that confront people who have the courage to speak out against powerful men, against powerful systems, and even those who stand by them. So I think it's very, very important that, sure, there are many other aspects to it. There can be attempts to derail it. They can be legitimate. There are mostly legitimate queries. But even the fact that, this evolves and it doesn't get the attention that it deserves, which I'm kind of surprised about, especially because it's happened so close to the Me Too movement, I think really should give us pause.
Okay. We are trying to make this a gender debate, which it is not, as has been pointed out on the table over here. It's actually a debate about power, of abuse of power, and about people who are actually finding the voice to speak out finally. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.